and all, I'm Alexis, aka the Salt Reader, and I'm here today to do a video all about some more of my favorite video games. I had a free spot in my schedule, so I basically asked you guys on Twitter. I had a Twitter poll of a couple of video ideas, and then people decided this is the video they were most interested in seeing. I actually have already filmed a video where I talked about my favorite video games, so I will link that down below. To be honest, it's not a great video, but I'm not going to be redundant and talk about the exact same video games I talked about in that one. So if you are interested, you can go check it out. And so these are 6 other video games I'm going to mention that I also deeply love. So the first game I'm going to talk about is my personal favorite game in the Legend of Zelda franchise, and that is Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This was originally released on the SNES, the Super NES, the Super Nintendo, you guys know what I mean. And then it was later re-released for the Game Boy. I don't remember which, maybe the Game Boy Advance, I don't fully remember. But this is by far still my favorite Legend of Zelda game. Of course, there are many others I really love: Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker. Loved Breath of the Wild, great game. Not only am I sentimental to A Link in the Past because it was the first Zelda game I personally ever played. I played it on the Game Boy Advance when they re-released it. But it was also one of the first like dungeon exploration games I ever played, and I love the top-down version of The Legend of Zelda, and I also just find the graphics in that game and the music and the story very endearing. But I also feel like so much of that game is so iconic for me. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of the Legend of Zelda franchise. I'm always interested to see where they take, you know, where Nintendo decides to take the franchise in the future. And yeah, I just really love A Link to the Past because I find it so endearing and I'm really sentimental towards it. But like, honestly, I just think it's really cute. But like, the music's really great in it too. The next one I'm gonna mention is actually a game I discovered for the first time this year. And full disclaimer, any of you who know, I actually have not played this game myself, which is going to be confusing, but I've watched the entirety of it streamed, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and I went on to do a lot of my own research for the game. And when I do finally get my gaming PC, I've already said it's the first game I'm buying, and it's one I actually have talked about on my channel before, and that is The Witcher 3. The Wild Hunt is the 3rd installment in the Witcher franchise, which is produced by CD Projekt, which is a Polish game design company. It's based on the series by Andrzej Sapkowski, who is a Polish writer, and basically you're following the main character Geralt, who is a Witcher, which means he is like a mutated breed of human, kind of, and he is trained from a young age to hunt monsters and kill monsters for contracts, and you're basically following the main character Geralt as he is looking for his adopted daughter Ciri, who is currently on the run from these creatures from another dimension called the Wild Hunt. That is a very simplistic version of what this game is about. This game easily has like over 200 hours of content if you're looking for a completionist route. Every decision you make in this game has its own consequences and sets the story on its own different path. I find the characters in this game absolutely flawed, but so lovable. I mean, like, I don't think you can play the game and not fall in love with Geralt, not fall in love with Ciri, and debatable, fall in love with either Yen or Triss, though TBH, Team Yen all the way. But there's so much to love about The Witcher. The graphics are incredible. CD Projekt took like 5 years to make the game, and it very much shows in the level of detailing in the graphics. The game is also just very combat heavy, but it's also very character and story driven. And you guys know I love video game soundtracks. A good soundtrack in a game 100% can sell me on it, and the soundtrack for The Witcher 3 is incredible. There's also like a mini card game that's woven in called Gwent, which A, is so much fun, and B, the soundtrack for all of the Gwent scenes are incredible. Like, the songs for the Gwent sequences are so good. And yeah, like, again, I, full disclosure, have not gotten a chance to play The Witcher 3 myself, but I am low-key very obsessed with something I've never actually got to do myself. And like, it's the first game I'm planning to buy, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it because like, I'm so excited. The next one I'm going to mention is also kind of an oldie, and that is the first Resident Evil game. Honestly, sacrilegious possibly, but for people who are experiencing it for the first time, I definitely recommend the HD remaster because the original game is from the 90s and it doesn't look great. Obviously it's produced by Capcom, and it just doesn't look great. The graphics are very much the 1990s era style graphics. So if you're interested in checking out Resident Evil for the first time, go for the HD remaster. And I'm sure plenty of you have either at least played a Resident Evil game or at least heard of one or seen the movies. But man, the first game is such a beautiful niche of puzzle survival horror. Like, it was one of the first games to really come up with that genre, and it's such a staple for that, and that's the thing I love the most about it. It's a horror game. It's obviously about the STARS team. They're going to this mansion to try and figure out what's going on, and obviously it's overrun with zombies and creatures, and you're following either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield as you're trying to figure out what's going on, right? And so you're going through the whole game, and you're solving puzzles, and you're fighting zombies. But there's so many beautiful little niche things that make the first Resident Evil game equal parts great and frustrating as hell. There's a fixed camera that is the most annoying thing you'll ever deal with, because the whole point of the fixed camera in that game is it's supposed to make so you have blind spots. You can't see what's up ahead, and so in the game you'll turn a corner and suddenly there's a zombie there, and you've got like 0.2 seconds to shoot the thing before it overruns you. And so it's meant to heighten that sense of terror that as you're playing the game, because you're literally like, I can't see what's in front of me, that kind of thing, which is genius as much as it is, again, frustrating. But it's so clever. Puzzles, the story, the graphics even for that time are so impressive, and it sparked a love in me for, again, that niche of survival puzzle horror games. And you guys know I love horror movies, I love horror games, and I definitely think on some level that did start with the first Resident Evil for me. So the next one I'm going to mention is one, for reasons God I can't even begin to talk about, and I'm going to talk about Metal Gear Solid number 3, and that is Snake Eater. It is the third of the main story for the Metal Gear Solid franchise. I'm not going to even try to explain the Metal Gear Solid story to you because it's so convoluted and messy, but it's so entertaining and it's so ridiculous. I don't think I've ever honestly played a game that has a ridiculous story that is entertaining, but it still works for how ridiculous it is. But basically the Metal Gear Solid franchise is you're following spies over the course of different periods in like world history. Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, is actually following the main character Snake as he's trying to infiltrate a like Russian military base to steal some plans and destroy a mech basically called the Shagohod. Anyway, so the reason I love this particular installment in Metal Gear Solid is because it's still as ridiculous as the rest of the games, but there's so much of the story that I love. I love the story with Boss, and I love the gameplay mechanics that go into all of the little mini boss battles in this game, because you're fighting like an elite group of spies who all have different names and powers that go along with their names. It's really convoluted, but it's great. And like the fact that you have to develop a strategy, but there's no technical right answer for each of these bosses, and that is one of the things that blows my mind about the effort Hideo Kojima put into developing the Metal Gear Solid games, is that there's so much in these games, it's ridiculous. Just to give you an example, there's this one boss who's like an older man, and I mean like he's like elderly, like 1 foot in the door elderly, that you fight. And there are literally like 6 or 7 different ways to kill this guy. One of them is to literally just wait him out, to like leave your game playing for a couple of days, come back, and he's dead. Or, which, spoilers, if you guys are gonna play the game, here's some tips. Another one is to actually to go into your game computer and change the date on it, and when you go back into the game, because it's so far in the future, the guy's dead. So it's like there's insane Easter eggs, but like player Easter eggs in this game that it blows my mind. There's so much about this game I don't even know about. It's not even necessarily Snake's origin story, but there's so much of Snake's character that you learn in this game that later influences a lot of the later, you know, bits in the franchise. And it's one of the most ridiculous and Japanese things I've ever experienced in my life. If you ever get a chance to play Snake Eater, I highly, highly recommend it. The next one I'm going to mention is one I honestly can't believe I left off of my earlier list that I made. And that is like a millennial classic, and that is Kingdom Hearts, which is obviously a mashup between Disney and Final Fantasy. And in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, you're following the main character Sora as his home is destroyed, and basically he is brought in to travel across different worlds to try and stop this darkness from devouring everything. That's like a really simplistic explanation of the plot. But in the games, you're going through different Disney worlds, and you're getting to play with these Disney characters, you're getting to interact with Final Fantasy characters, staples in both franchises, explore these universes that you know so well from other places, but you're getting to do it all through Sora's eyes, and you're getting to, it's like an RPG, but with Disney and Final Fantasy. And it's a game that I absolutely love. It was one of the first games I ever personally owned as a kid. I owned it for the PS2, I think. And I remember like getting it and loving it, playing through it a bunch, and then the second one came out and I played through it a bunch, and now the third one's coming out and I'm gonna play through it a bunch. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I cannot believe I forgot Kingdom Hearts on the first one, because like Kingdom Hearts is such a staple in like 80% of millennials' lives. Like, how could I forget it? It's such an enjoyable game. It's just really dark, but also really fun. The last one I'm going to mention is one that honestly is like no surprise when I'm gonna say it. It's another survival horror game, and that is Alien Isolation, which is a video game based on Alien, in which you are playing Ellen Ripley's daughter as she gets a message saying that her mother was on a science base, and when she gets there looking for her mother, she finds that everything is totally gone to hell. Not only are there xenomorphs, but there are also these like wayward androids who are killing everybody. Basically, it's just like everything you'd expect an Alien video game to be. There is combat in it, but a large portion of the game is trying to remain unseen, because like you can't kill the xenomorphs, you literally just have to run and hide from them. And it's such a great, I've talked about it so many times, I'm just gonna keep holding my xenomorph queen. I've talked about it so many times, but science fiction horror is that little pocket genre that I love with my whole heart. It's another reason why I love the game Dead Space, which I didn't put on this list because I was like, I'm not gonna talk a lot about science fiction horror, but I do love Dead Space. But it's so terrifying, and the lighting and the game controls all play up into that terror, and it's so successful, but it's also all wrapped into a franchise and a world that I already love. I've talked so many times about how much I love the Alien franchise, how much I just adore like alien lore, and the game all incorporates that so well, and it's just such a great successful horror game in general. But if you love the Alien movies, like, it's such a requirement to play. It's so good. Alrighty guys, so those were 6 more of my favorite video games. I do have an entire other video where I talk about like other, I think it's 9 or 10 other games that like I absolutely love. I would absolutely love to know what you guys' favorite video games are, or if you have very strong feelings about any of these video games I mentioned here or in my other previous video. If you like what I do, I upload videos on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I would absolutely love it if you guys subscribed, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!